So how does Bitcoin deliver on those freedom promises that we went through? How is it designed? What are the key important features of Bitcoin that enable us these freedoms? One thing we touched upon last week was the essence that Bitcoin's design is it's designed to be a sound money. If we look back to gold, a lot of people held on to gold, seeing it as a sounder money. Bitcoin actually accelerates that. We took a dip in between gold and Bitcoin, which was called fiat currency. So we can see these three currencies lined up here on screen. And if you cast your eyes to the right-hand column where it says crypto or Bitcoin to be specific, we see that Bitcoin has a large amount of qualities that we'd like to see in a sound money. So Bitcoin is fungible. One Bitcoin is inter-exchangeable for another. It's non-consumable, unlike cows and bread and wheat. It's portable, being digital, super portable. You can travel pretty much anywhere you like with your Bitcoin. You don't have to unlock it from the safe. You don't have to store it anywhere apart from on a small device, which we'll cover in the next session. It's super durable because essentially we'll look into the network and how your Bitcoin is secured and how it's confirmed and where it's stored. But essentially it's accessible from everywhere. Highly divisible, being digital. It's secure, easily transactable, and scarce. And that's one of the things we're going to jump into today is about the scarceability, the scarcity of Bitcoin and its predictable supply behind that. First, I wanted to delve into a little bit of history though. So on the history books, digital currency. Digital currency, people were looking at designing this for a long, long time, pretty much as soon as computers became a thing and cryptography was pretty much embedded into our computers. People were looking at, hey, how can we digitize our money? How can we make virtual or digital currencies? And here are some of the forefathers of Bitcoin. You know, before Satoshi showed up, before Bitcoin was a thing, there were people working on this type of problem. And on the left, we have Nick Szabo, middle David Schwam, and then on the right-hand side, we have Hal Finney. And these guys are basically computer scientists with an interest in protecting privacy. Some would call them the cypherpunks. Also, they had a very strong backing in cryptography. So they're looking at how they can leverage technology to digitize money without compromising on what the properties of sound money should be, which we just saw. But it's not that simple. There were some problems with digital currency in the early days, and we'll delve into some of those right now. We don't have to get too technical. I want to keep this pretty approachable. It is Bitcoin 101, but essentially there was a digital dilemma with digital currencies. If you have photos on your iPhone and you want to send them over to a hard drive, you can copy paste. If you have documents at work on the cloud, you can download them. Everything that's digital, one of the big advantages of digital assets, files, documents, photos, whatever, music, is that it's easily transferable and also easily copyable. So that's a huge advantage when it comes to digital files and information. But when it comes to money, that's the exact opposite of what we want. We don't want to be able to control copy and control paste money. I mean, it would be great for a certain amount of time until everybody caught on to the trick, right? If I had $1,000 in a digital currency and I copy pasted it, I'd have 2. And then again, I'd have 4. And then again, I've had $8,000. But if everybody did this, eventually it would take with a matter of hours before the entire system was broken. So this is one of the key problems in how do you secure a digital currency without it becoming copyable? And there's another dilemma as well that happens when the digital currency isn't fully backed. And this is called the double spend. So in double spend, usually if I have, like, let's say $100 on a debit card, the money's held at my bank. If I go and spend that money, the bank will check if I have that money and report back to the merchant that I do. That's a single spend. But if it was a digital currency that wasn't belonging to a bank, how could I ensure that I'm not able to spend the $100 at one merchant and then spend the same $100 at a second merchant before they worked it out? And I could leave with, you know, like 6 or 7 steaks, and I could leave with some t-shirts or whatever I bought from each merchant. Would there be a way that I could trick people that I double spent 1 Bitcoin? So these were problems that the 4 founders were kind of tangling with. How can we use technology and encryption and networks to be able to create a digital currency that isn't copyable and that can't be double spent. So people are tangled with it for a while. And one of the other problems with the digital caches that existed, because they did make prototypes and they did try out different projects, but all of them failed, unfortunately. Most of them failed because to ensure there wasn't a double spend and to ensure people weren't copying and pasting, they would centralize the control of that currency. They would have a server or a system of hardware that would be verifying all the transactions and making sure everybody was spending from column A was sending out to column B, and there was no copy pasting going on, right? So the solution was to centralize everything. But if we look at, for a centralized system, we'll take the circulation system that you and I have. We have blood circulating in our veins and arteries, but it's all being driven by the heart. And the problem with the heart is it's a single point of failure. A heart attack is critical and mortal. So these digital currencies being centralized had the same vulnerabilities as the circulation system. They had a single point of failure. So it was very vulnerable, and you don't want to build your finance on something that's vulnerable. Also, these systems were built on trust as well. If you're centralizing and you're having an organization or a protocol or some type of software running, you're essentially trusting that person to do all the verification and make sure that your funds aren't being pulled away from you as a what we call a rug pull. You're not getting the rug pulled from under your feet. You don't put your money in and then it disappears. Also, you don't want to make sure that the people who made this system are not benefiting from it and profiting from it at your expense. So the trust that were built into these systems was also a weakness. So we had some dilemmas and we had some foundational issues. And it wasn't until Satoshi Nakamoto showed up that we were able to solve these problems. And when people ask me basically what is Bitcoin, as a 101, as a very basic, if you can go away with anything being learned today, it's that Bitcoin essentially is a solution to a problem. Those problems we just mentioned. We also have the broken money problem as well. So we have two different directions of problems. We have the fact that the money is being diluted through inflation and it's outside of our control and being used against us. And we also have the fact that people in technology were not able to yet create a digital currency that would be fair, free, and open to everybody. So Satoshi showed up and he published this white paper. We mentioned that in session 1. If you do want to take the time to read through this, enjoy reading it, enjoy not understanding everything. That's where I was when I first started to pick up Bitcoin and learn about it. But the white paper essentially was Satoshi's proposal of the solution to the problem. Bitcoin was a combination of a few different elements into one. It was a combination of a decentralized ledger, so not a single point of failure. It was using proof of work, which we'll talk about when we come to mining, to establish a consensus between these decentralized parties. Also, we could ensure time stamping and time ordering was put in place to avoid that double spend, where I can't spend at merchant A and merchant B. And within that structure, there was a native asset, which is called Bitcoin, and it rewards your participation. So in fact, in Bitcoin, one of its strengths is you are rewarded much more by participating in the network than trying to destroy it. So the single point of failure has gone. In fact, failure and trust in general has been removed from this system, and we're rewarded for participating in it as well, which we'll call mining. But there's other ways as well that you can benefit from participating in the system. So the economic incentives that make lying expensive and truth-telling profitable. It was basically super honest, decentralized, open network. And we're going to delve into a little bit of that. Here's how Satoshi described it. He said a lot of people automatically dismiss e-currency or digital currencies as the lost cause because of all of the companies that failed since the 1990s. I hope it's obvious it was only the centrally controlled nature of those systems that doomed them. I think this is the first time we're trying a decentralized, non-trust-based system. So let's check it out. Now, to fully understand Bitcoin, this is maybe the second thing that you could take away from the Bitcoin 101 session today. Number one being that Bitcoin is a solution to a problem. Number two being that when we say the word Bitcoin, it actually means two different things. It can mean Bitcoin, the asset, as in how many Bitcoin did you buy yesterday? or what's the price in Bitcoin. It also means the network. So we've got the asset and the network. Bitcoin are two different things really combined into one. You know, it probably wasn't the best terminology to use, and it gets people a little bit confused. But for the sakes of the Bitcoin 101 presentation, we're going to tease these two apart, look at what Bitcoin the asset is and what Bitcoin the network is. So we're going down the rabbit hole. People call this a rabbit hole because once you start answering some of your questions, you'll have more questions and you'll find out more information, and you can start delving into all of the complexities of this beautiful network and this beautiful asset. But the thing to remember is it's a lot of information to understand, but take it bit by bit. Other people call it being orange pilled because it can awaken you to the fallacies and the problems with the current system as well. You can't learn about Bitcoin without learning about the current money system. To move away from the current money system, we have to understand it, why it's broken, and move into Bitcoin as well. So it can reveal a lot of things about macroeconomics, the money you use, economics in general. So you can enjoy learning about this as well as you become orange pilled, as some people say. The thing to do whilst you're learning about Bitcoin is to, try and hide the pain. There might be some things you don't understand. There'll be terminology you've never heard of before. It might reveal some weak points. It did for me, at least anyway. I wasn't very much a computer tech guy. I was working in languages. I was working in teaching. I worked a bit in finance, but the computer side was kind of my pain point for me. But I persisted and I made it through, and I've learned more and more throughout the years, and you can do as well. So don't be afraid of some of the technological learning curves. You'll get them eventually. Just try and hide the pain for the moment. Studying Bitcoin can be like it can be like a chemical reaction where there's an activation energy required. Your motivation, you're tuning in on a Friday night, so that's already a good sign. You're listening through to webinars and trying to digest as much information as possible, but there is a large activation energy required until you break through. So just keep knocking away at it. Try and be like Brent. Just thumbs up, you got this. Because the thing to remember at the end of the day is that Bitcoin is for everyone. I truly believe that. It's not just for the wealthy. It's not just for the technically savvy. We can use other examples in the real world, like a combustion engine. You use one to go about your day. You don't know how it works exactly. Some people do, some people don't. Personally, I don't, but I use my car every day. Credit cards, we don't know how they work on the back end thoroughly, but again, easy to use and we can benefit from the system. And another one as well, I was messing around with my router recently and I realized how little I know about the internet, but we all use it. You tuned into this session right now. So Bitcoin's the same thing. Try and see it in the same way, that if there's technicalities, you don't have to understand the deepest levels of it. Just start by using it and gaining knowledge slowly. Because we are in an adoption curve. This is new technology, and just like the combustion engine, just like the credit card, just like the router, Bitcoin is emerging as a new technology and eventually will be commonplace. But we're in early stages as well, and you are a part of one of the early adopters. So you should congratulate yourself about this. Okay, enough said about how to learn about Bitcoin. Let's actually do some learning. So Bitcoin, the asset. So this is what we're talking about by the monetary asset, the unit of Bitcoin. So here's a graph that we saw in session 1. This is the M2 money supply of Canada. This is how much money is in circulation in bank accounts, in balances, in deposits, in transactions as a general. And we can see over the years this has increased hugely. This is why things got expensive. This is why people are talking about inflation. And this is why it became to the forefront, because the more money the government needs, the more money the Bank of Canada gives them, and they distribute this into the economy, and essentially it dilutes the value of the money you already have. So this is a problem with the monetary system we have at the moment. So the Canadian asset as a dollar is not doing very well. We can pivot to something a bit more progressive and a bit more conservative at the same time. We're moving towards a different monetary system, and we can see this in Bitcoin because it has a fixed supply and gradual issuance, which is controlled. It's not in the hands of politicians. It's not a knee-jerk reflex to the people that are unhappy. Let's give them free money and we'll tax our generations later to get it back. In fact, Bitcoin is planned out for the next 100 years easily. We know exactly how things are going to play out, and as a result, we can plan our futures around that. It also has an inflation rate which is deflationary as well. So there's Bitcoin being given into the system to make sure it functions and to give those incentives that we mentioned earlier, but it's being reduced as we go along. So eventually there will be no more Bitcoin injected into the system. So this provides us with a gradual supply, which is fixed, which we can plan around. And that means that your money will never be diluted. And without getting into too much mathematics, there's a formula behind this. It's not a person, it's not a lobby, it's not some consultants. It's already set. This is the formula. You can see at the right-hand side, there's the number 21 million. That's how many Bitcoin will ever be created. And you can also see some other aspects in this equation, which I can put up here. You don't have to understand this. It's just to know that what's backing the policy of Bitcoin is mathematics. And we can mathematically work through Bitcoin as our source of money. We can see what's happening. We can measure it. It's all open as well. So there's no walled communities where we have to get access to it. So maths is backing Bitcoin. And this is how it works as an issuance schedule. Back in 2009, when Bitcoin was created, every 10 minutes, approximately, there would be 50 Bitcoin given out. And then after about 4 years, it was a bit quicker around that time, in 2012, that would be halved. The supply is halved. We call this the halving. It would be 25. Half of 25 becomes 12.5. And if we zoom over to 2024, 2025 we're in now, every 10 minutes there are 3.125 Bitcoin created. And this is part of the issuance. But it will never, all of this Bitcoin will add up to less than 21 million. There'll never be more. And why is this important? Well, on the left-hand side, we can see a king of England. This is King Henry I. And King Henry I was responsible mainly for the metric system. But the reason why we call it an inch or a foot is because it was actually his thumb, or pouce in French, on his foot that became the standard of whatever the measurement system was. But they had problems. When monarchs died, they didn't know how to measure the new imperial system. So the inch and the foot would change depending on who the monarch was, which was a really strange system. And the reason why I'm talking about this is because the Canadian dollar is the same. As they print more Canadian dollars and inflate away our previous dollars, what we measure in is changing. If you have a house that's gone up $5,000 in price, congratulations. But the problem is you've got to adjust for inflation all the time. It's like a shifting scale. With Bitcoin, with its fixed supply of 21 million, we're talking about a Bitcoin standard. And I mean standard as in accepted and paid for and people use it, but also a standard in terms of we can measure things with it. We can measure fair prices in it. We can measure our time and effort and energy with it as well. So Bitcoin becomes a fairer way to measure because it has a fixed supply. We're not changing the measurement tool. It's almost like if you were a carpenter and you were making tables and you make 10-foot tables, but then they change the definition of what a foot is. So how do you measure your tables again? Have they become 9-foot tables? Now you're selling 8-foot tables. Bitcoin will always have you set at that 10-foot table. So you can work to this standard as a measuring tool. It's super useful because we do measure a lot of things with our money. Money is a measurement of how much time we've put into something, how successful we are, what generational wealth we have to pass on to our children. And if it's being inflated away, we're always chasing something that's being pushed further and further away from us. Bitcoin avoids this. The way it works is that everything can be divided by 21 million. Essentially, this is quite an iconic equation in Bitcoin, infinity divided by 21 million. Let's just do a quick bit of maths. I did this really quickly today, but I wanted to take the price of if you'd invested $10,000 in Bitcoin 10 years ago, 5 years ago, 3 years ago, 2 years ago, and 1 year ago, where would you be at now? And this isn't to tell you to buy Bitcoin at all costs right now. The numbers speak for themselves. But what's interesting is if we look across to the 1, 2, 3, 4th column where it says supply, we always have 21 million. We know that there are 21 million Bitcoin in existence. So we can look at how much of the total amount of Bitcoin you own. So if I just bought $10,000 of Bitcoin in 2nd of May, 2015, each Bitcoin would have cost me $286.65 Canadian. This would have bought me 34.89 Bitcoin. As a supply of 21 million, I can divide it up and work out that I would have had 0.000166,123% of the total supply. I'd have had a solid percentage of the total supply. And if we look at the value of that now, well, that's the why you should buy the Bitcoin thing, because that value would have been it would have been 1.8 million more or less. But if we move further through, if you look at like year 3, if I'd have spent the same $10,000 in May 2022, the price has gone up by a lot. It's $50,000 a Bitcoin around about that time. It would have bought me 0.2 Bitcoin. But when I divide by 21 million, I can still work out how much of the total supply I would have owned. It would have been 0.000, a lot of zeros, 971. But the important thing is, if you held that Bitcoin, whether you bought it a year ago, 5 years ago, or 10 years ago, you have the same percentage of the total supply. It will never change. So your percentage, your stake in this Bitcoin as a total supply will never change. And that's what's interesting about a fixed supply. It's the fact that one Bitcoin will always equal one Bitcoin. If you have that amount, it won't be eroded away. And this enables basically saving. In fact, it's not really true. One Bitcoin does equal one Bitcoin, but we can also divide them down, right? A lot of people say, well, it's all well and good there, Pablo. I can't afford one Bitcoin. In fact, for every one Bitcoin, there are 100 million Satoshis. It's divisible, remember? It's a digital asset, so we can divide it down into 100 million parts. And each one of those parts is called a Satoshi. So you can buy Satoshis instead of having to buy a whole Bitcoin. That was the asset. Good job. We're going to move into the second half now, which is the network. Gets a bit more geeky, a bit more techie, but you've understood the money part of it, but we've got to understand how this money moves. And to do that, we've got to get the network understood. So a quick flyover of the Bitcoin network. Again, this was all put into the white paper, so you can check that out. It was something that was new to me. I got the finance part more than the network part. You might be the opposite. Just understand that there are two separate parts to Bitcoin, the asset and the network. So one of the big foundational parts of the network is this thing called the blockchain. What we're essentially doing is batching transactions together. We're giving them set information. We're verifying that information. And once everything is good, we move on to the next block. And the next block incorporates aspects of the first block, the new transactions, the new information, the new time, and we verify that. And then we moved on to the third block, and so on. And as I look at the moment, I have a clock over here. We're at block 894,912. So there's been a lot of these blocks, but what are they? The best way to understand them is I call them, it's like a ledger. If we look back in time to old companies where things weren't digitized, accountants or bookkeepers would write down the transactions on a ledger. And at the end of the day, the ledger would be calculated out, credits, debits, deposits, withdrawals, whatever it may be, purchases, payments to employees. They'd work it all out, and at the end of the day, they'd close their books. They'd work out if we're at a net profit or a net loss, then they close the book for the day. The next day, they'd come back into work and they'd open up the book again and probably start on a fresh page. The blockchain's kind of like that. Essentially, each block represents more or less a page on a ledger. And when things are closed out and everything's good, we turn page and we move on to the next block. So try and see the distributed ledger as exactly that, a ledger. But it's digital, but it's a good image to use. But the distributed part of it is a bit weird. So imagine having not one bookkeeper, but a network of bookkeepers, and they're all looking at the same information together and they're verifying everything individually. So now we get not just one bookkeeper, we get thousands of bookkeepers across the world. And this is how we have a distributed ledger. Each computer that runs Bitcoin is playing the role of a bookkeeper, checking the transactions, checking that there's no copy pasting going on, checking that there's no double spending going on, and checking that everybody who says they have their Bitcoin has it. So this is the process. We have thousands of bookkeepers distributed across the world checking a ledger. And this is what they look like. It's not much more complicated than a $100 computer and a hard drive. The hard drive holds the transactions and the computer does the verifying, and we call these things a node. I run one here in my home and it's verifying every single transaction, and I get to play my part. As we said, it's a participant-based system. So the more you play into it, the more you learn, the more stake you have in finding out what's going on. And I also have a vote. I get to say if transactions are verified or not. In fact, I don't. My computer does, but you get the point. After that, a level above, we have users, and then the nodes. A level above the node is the miner. Now, the miner's doing the hard work, which is basically verifying all of the transactions and competing to be the chief bookkeeper who decides which transactions go into the next block. The nodes will check it, but the miner will write the block. They're the one with, like, everybody else is working in pencil and the miner's working in pen. And this is what a transaction looks like. So we have users on the top left who are going to use transactions and select their fees and send the Bitcoin to where it needs to go. They'll use a wallet, which will sign it, give a private signature to that transaction, and it'll be distributed by the nodes. They'll send it out across the global network. They'll enter it into the ledger, and then the miner will pick up the ledger and compete to be able to write that into the next block. And once it's done, the new block is communicated back out to the nodes, and then the nodes can continue keeping the books. So it's kind of an ecosystem here, what we can see. And in fact, because it's an ecosystem, we've seen a lot of different companies evolve. Bitcoin doesn't belong to anybody. Bitcoin's not a company. Bitcoin doesn't have a CEO. Bitcoin's a protocol. And because it has no centralized control, well, there's lots of different people who decided to contribute in different ways. And Bull Bitcoin's one of them. You can see it's there on the bottom right. We're an exchange. So we help people buy and sell Bitcoin. That's the role that we play in this ecosystem. But you also have people who specialize in custody, adoption, increasing privacy, development, payments, lots of different space for innovation, essentially, because there are lots of needs. People who use Bitcoin have different needs, and each company here caters to those needs. Okay, so that was the asset, and that was the network. But let's have a look at how we can use Bitcoin. This is one of the things we were going to get to. So how can we use it exactly? In fact, it's super functional. As a money, yes, it's evolving. Yes, we're early adopters. And yes, it's not acceptable everywhere. But essentially, this creation that was made by Satoshi with its distributed ledger, with its initiatives of participation, the fact it's free and open source, means that you can buy it, you can sell it, you can trade it, you can save it, you can hold on to it as a bearer asset, and you can send it and receive it. So buying and selling, that involves exchanging it for the dollar, right? This is what we do at Bull Bitcoin. We help people send us Canadian dollars and we send them Bitcoin, or vice versa. They can send us Bitcoin and we send them Canadian dollars. So we can buy it and sell it. Some people trade it. As a beginner, if you're looking at this, I wouldn't recommend it. You really have to understand a lot of aspects of Bitcoin to understand how to trade it. And even then, there's a bit of magic involved. It's a weird thing to do. I recommend saving it because of all of the reasons we talked about earlier about it being a sound money, about there being a fixed supply, about it having all of these wonderful properties. It does enable saving again. You don't have to invest in some sketchy investment portfolio. You don't have to take big risks with gambling on blue chip stocks, and you don't have to pour in hours of renovation and fees and taxes on property. Bitcoin is a buy it and hold it kind of way of saving, super low friction. You can also send it and receive it. So this can be to anybody. If you've got family, you might have like children who are at college, you can send it to wherever they go to college. It could be in Canada, it could be overseas. If you're working in a different country to your family, you can send money back to them. You can send it and receive it in any way possible. And no one can stop you because there's no one in the middle. There's a node and there's a miner, but these are computers. There's no institutions. So these are all the things we can use it for. We can buy cups of coffee with it. I do in Quebec. There's a small coffee shop that accepts Bitcoin. You can store it on one of these calculator-looking devices. You can also make bigger transactions. At Bull Bitcoin, we help people buy and sell houses using Bitcoin. We act as an escrow service. We receive Bitcoin. We hand it over to a notary. We can work in kind of a payment process way. So you can essentially sell your house and receive Bitcoin, or vice versa again. You can use your Bitcoin to buy gift cards. If, let's say, the local coffee shop doesn't accept Bitcoin, you can use your Bitcoin to buy a gift card, and you can use that gift card. You can also pay for goods and services. I met a couple people in the trades. I have a master therapist who accepts Bitcoin. There's also a mechanic nearby who accepts Bitcoin. And I've met a plumber who accepts Bitcoin. So I can pay for all these services in Bitcoin. And like I said, you can send it and receive it between friends to close out a restaurant bill. If you owe your landlord rent, you can pay rent in it, and you can trade it. So let's look at how do you get your hands on Bitcoin as well. It's all great being able to send it and receive it, but concretely, if you want to get off zero, if you have zero Bitcoin right now and you're wondering, how do I get some? There's three different ways that you can acquire Bitcoin. Number one is the most kind of grassroots way, I'd say. It's using a peer-to-peer network. So this could involve meeting somebody at a coffee shop. They have cash, or sorry, you have cash and they have Bitcoin, and they send you Bitcoin and you hand them the cash. And then you walk away, almost like a Facebook marketplace kind of trade. You know, you meet somebody in real life, they have what you want, you buy it from them. You can also do that type of transaction, but online, using different escrow services. So that's the padlock on that diagram there. You can send, they will send Bitcoin into the escrow. You send cash over to them, and that unlocks the Bitcoin that gets sent to you. So there's an escrow service in the middle, but that's another nice anonymous way to buy Bitcoin. Other ways are a bit more in the physical space as well. You have ATMs, usually have a very high spread because it's a service. You have to pay for the upkeep of the machine. So watch out for the prices on those things. And also in some cities, there are OTC desks, which look like a desk where you'd buy pesos or euros when you're going on vacation. So you show up, you make a transaction, and they hand you over Bitcoin, not as cash, but they'll send you the transaction. And then finally, there's exchanges, and that's where Bull Bitcoin comes in, because we're available 24/7. We have very good spreads, and we'll allow you to buy and sell Bitcoin with no friction, essentially. You can be at home. You can send money to a third party if you want to pay for something. If you want to sell a house, we can help you do all these different transactions. And we're very much on demand as a website. So this is what we contribute to the Bitcoin ecosystem. If you want to sign up for an account, we've already shown the QR code. You might have missed it on the first session, but it's here. You'll get reduced fees when you sign up using this code here as well, as part of our collaboration with Liberty Dispatch. So do check us out if you are looking at getting off zero. If Bitcoin is interesting for you, if you want to just start taking the first moves, jump in and try it out. It is a kind of learn as you go experience as well. If anybody's listening to this thinking, hey, there's so much I have to master, don't worry. I was at that position as well myself. I was wondering, how can I understand everything before making a move? But what actually happened for me was I made small moves, and every time I made a small move, I learned a bit more. It's a kind of learn as you go process. Move slow, ask the questions. Hearable Bitcoin will always be happy to help you out. That's why we do these type of webinars. And we got Bitcoin mentors showing up next week. They're going to tell you how you can, once you've bought it, how you can hold it, and how you can send it and receive it and use it in a very frictionless but secure and private way. So yeah, that's coming on to our third webinar.